Morena koutou katoa. PΑMAMAE number 5. And as we continue the discussion around dealing with pain, hurt, sorrow, etc., this kaupapa is around reviving, reclaiming, relearning practices of our tupuna and actually creating new practices to help us to deal with grief, to deal with trauma. In particular, there are a whole range of practices which 20 years ago and further, most of our old people would have just called them wakarite. And the different wakarite that they would do to help us remember acts that had been performed prior, but also help us deal with trauma. And so here's a couple of examples. First one, rites of passage. Traditionally, we did rites of passage not just at the coming of age, but throughout our lives. And these rites of passage were done so that when we get into trouble later, we would then recall those rites of passage which focused in on different energies to help us through troubles. And so a classic one is there's a lot of kōrero about men going through depression as they get a little bit older. And when we would get our huru on our raho, that was a time to do one rite of passage. When you grow your pubic hairs, you do that rite of passage, and the girls when they get their period, because those rites of passage would help you remember, especially if things got dark later on in your life. And for the boys, you'd be dedicated to Tamanui Te Rā, to the sun, so that you could then draw on the sun for that energy. And the women, you'd be dedicated to the moon, to Hine Te Marama, or Hina, so that you can draw on her energy. And naturally, the period is often connected to the moon. Not always, but often. So that's one, rites of passage. And then there's a whole process to do that. Another one is after somebody has died, and you'd go and bless the house, or takahi te whare. And the takahi whare was done to not only instill positive energy back into the home where the deceased used to live, but also you do it so that you remember this time with your family and the love with your family, especially once they leave and the nights become lonely. In addition to that, our tupuna added something, which is why I said earlier, might be worth creating your own different practices. But they then added, once alcohol came, they then added a shot. And that shot was to waken you up. Kia oho te tangata. Oh, that's a bit harsh. Well, that's a bit of a fright to the system. And that was done to help you lift yourself. The challenge then is addiction gets into play, and then people get pissed. Which wasn't the tikanga. The tikanga was about using something new as an agent to give you a quick lift without getting carried away. And there are many other practices, including cold water, to help you to change from one state to another, or to help you deal with hurt, pain, sorrow and trauma, and to draw on those acts over your life for the good times. And so there's a heap of different wakarite, and you talk to any of the nanas and koros, they're going to wakarite, and they'd say that word for everything. Whereas now we tend to be being a bit more specific, and they only used wakarite because they knew what they were talking about, and language wasn't a problem. So they didn't need to name many things because they just understood. Because it's all based on context. So that's enough for this morning. It's holidays now. Got to take son to basketball. And so tēnā koutou. Have a great week. Kia ora tātou.